Need some basic dungeon tiles for your table? Let's go build some. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Maldor's Crafts. Today we're going to be talking about dungeon tiles. And as you can see here, we have what I'd like to call a basic dungeon tile. We have the 3x3 format here in this tile that I went ahead and constructed. I made about 10 of these up for my gaming table. I've wanted to make a set of these dungeon tiles for a long time, so finally got around to doing that. And what we have here is obviously the 3x3 format, 1-inch grid for 28 to 32 millimeter minis. And I went ahead and constructed these out of all the stuff that I normally make my stuff out of, which is XPS foam, extruded polystyrene XPS foam. And we have this here in the 1/2 inch tall. Originally, the XPS foam that I was cutting these out of was 1 inch, and I went ahead and cut these to the 3x3 format that I wanted and cut them in half to 1/2 inch. And these seem to work the best for me. I was using the Ready Board Dollar Tree foam board, and for whatever reason, I don't know why, I went ahead and bought a huge batch on Amazon. And I even tried getting a batch from the dollar store at my local dollar store, and that stuff would not come off. The paper that peels off normally on those Ready Board and the foam board would not come off. So eventually, which I was going to do anyways, I went ahead and started using XPS foam, and it works phenomenal. Love this stuff. I'll probably end up doing another video on that later on down the road in another episode, but getting back to the dungeon tiles. So I made up a huge batch of these, and as you can see here, got a huge stack of these here. And these, I thought they came out pretty dang good. Went ahead and did the classic cutting through with the utility knife and then going back over it with a mechanical pencil to really define the lines. Added some black bomb to strengthen it up, and then added some gray, light gray shade of light brown to really touch it up and bring it back to life. And as you can see there, I think these turned out pretty good. Catch some of that detail there. And on the bottom, I went ahead and just left it black bombed, because we're not going to be really looking at the bottom. More of the detail and everything everybody's going to see on the game table is on the top. So this is the 3x3 format, obviously. In a later episode, I do plan on doing different variations of these dungeon tiles. I'm going to go ahead and do a regular 2x2, 4, I guess you would call it a total of 4 squares tile. I'm going to end up doing a 2x2, maybe even a 2x3, 2x4, and 2x6, and then maybe even a 8x8 to start building a dungeon. I am writing a campaign right now currently, one of my own home brews, and I am going to be building a dungeon for that campaign, so I'll do another episode on that campaign. I don't want to give any teasers out right now or any hints to what's going to happen, because it's kind of a surprise. So make sure you stay tuned for that. It's going to be really good. So let's go ahead and head over to the craft table and see how we made these dungeon tiles. So we're going to go ahead and start off by using the extruded polystyrene foam, XPS foam. And here I have the 1-inch foam that I was talking about previously in the beginning of the video. And what I'm doing now is cutting it 3 by 3 inches squared. That way we can go ahead and later cut these in half to a 1/2 inch for our tiles when they're all finished. So after I made up a batch of those, I went ahead and just grabbed every single one and made my fence to a total measure of a 1/2 inch and went ahead and cut all of my 1-inch pieces to 1/2 inch thickness. Just remember when you're cutting with a hot wire cutter, sometimes you get all the fumes and the smoke, so just make sure you're in a well ventilated area, or you have a fan, or if you're in an enclosed room, just open up the windows. That way you're not breathing any of those fumes in. So we're just going to go ahead and cut up a whole bunch of these tiles here. And so as you can see here, I have a whole batch of these already cut up. So when you're doing these, make sure you do a bunch of them at one time. That way you're not doing individual tiles. It's going to end up taking you all day. So here we have our basic 3 by 3 square tile. And I'm just using a little metal ruler that I have. And I'm using a Sharpie. And I'm just getting as close as I can to 3 inches of measurement, and I'm marking with the Sharpie at the 1 and 2 inch lines. And I'm going to go ahead and spin the tile all the way around, and I'm going to continue to do this all the way until I get all sides of the tiles, similar to what we did in the tavern tile video. So now that we have all of our marks set up, what we're going to do is go ahead and we're going to get some tin foil, and we're going to go ahead and wrap this up and make a ball out of it, and we're going to use this to texturize our tile. So now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to add a lot of pressure on here actually. And I'm just going to go ahead and roll this whole entire ball of foil all over the tile here. And this is going to give it that texture. And I didn't show it previously, but just like the tavern tiles, you're going to go ahead and use your utility knife, and you're going to go ahead and score those lines in there to make your 1-inch grid. So we finished one, and we're just going to go ahead and roll another piece of tile with the tin foil ball. Now you want to make sure when you're rolling this foil that you don't roll it consistently. You just kind of want to flip it and make sure you get a different design on each piece. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn them onto the side here, and I'm also going to get the sides because we are going to use the mechanical pencil and the utility knife, and we're going to make these lines for the tiles go all the way around. Looking pretty good so far. So now we're going to use the mechanical pencil. I really like using the mechanical pencil because I just feel that the tip really gouges into those lines and really defines those lines for the grid. So just like the tavern tiles, you're just going to go ahead and score all the way through and bring out those 1-inch grid lines. Looking pretty good on the lines. Gonna go ahead and do another one real quick. Normally I do this first before I add the texture, but I just was curious to see what it was going to look like or how it was going to turn out. And I kind of like doing the texture beforehand because these grid lines really pop out and are more defined. So just some experimentation with the tiles here. You can use a pencil, you can use a tip of a pen, but I find the mechanical pencil really brings them out. Starting to look pretty good. So once you have all your texture and your grid lines finished, we're going to go ahead and move on to the black bomb. And again, it's the classic Mod Podge and black paint. And we're going to go ahead and just coat this and add a nice heavy coat to this. And as usual, you want to make sure that you get all your paint mixture and the Mod Podge mixture in the grid lines. That way they kind of seep into the lines. Later on when we go to add paint, they'll be real defined and pop out. If you decide to add a black wash, these lines will pop out even more along with the texture. We're not going to do a black wash on these. Again, these are kind of experimental, so just make sure that if you're not going to use a black wash, you add a decent amount of paint inside the lines. That way they stand out when we're finished. So once you have the top finished, I usually move to one side and directly paint the opposite side, and that way I have something to kind of grab onto. In future videos, I am going to come up with some sort of handle. I don't know what I'm going to make it out of yet, but that way something I can hold on to and kind of pin everything that I'm painting. That way I don't have to worry about holding anything. And again, the Mod Podge, or I'm sorry, Black Bomb mix is just, I use the matte Mod Podge and just black paint of your choice. I did not come up with this method. If you really want to get a good video, make sure to go check out Black Magic Craft. He has an awesome video on black wash and Mod Podge mix with the black paint for black bombing. So make sure you go check out his video. So we have one kind of finished up and ready to dry, and we're going to go ahead and move on to another one. And remember, when you are doing the texture roll with the tinfoil, the deeper you go with the tinfoil and the harder you press and the more you gouge, the more of this black bomb is going to seep into those indentations and really define it once you start doing a dry brush. So keep in mind, the lighter you do it, the less defined the black bomb paint will show up after you do a dry brush. So the heavier you do it, the more defined it's going to come out. And for whatever reason, on my black bomb mix here I have in my cup, for some reason it was real thin. I don't know if it's because of the heat or the temperature change going from winter to summer, but for some reason it felt like my I don't know if I didn't add enough paint or what, but it just feels like it was really thin, so I had to continuously add more black bomb to this tile. So once your tile is all finished up drying, we're going to go ahead and move over to gray. This is going to be pewter gray from Apple Barrel. And I'm just grabbing a smaller brush and I'm going to do a dry brush here. And I went ahead and put the excess on a piece of paper towel, and I'm just kind of experimenting to see how I like the dry brush, how it's coming out. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add over the tile here. And if you'll notice, I'm not really going back and forth. I'm just kind of brushing one way. That way you don't get the paint into the texture roll and cover those up. You want those to kind of pop out. So as you can see here, I'm just brushing one way. I'm not going back and forth. I want those texture indentations to kind of pop out, and when you add the pewter gray over it, they really pop out and start to come to life. And as you can see, the black bomb that seeped into the grid lines are really defined since we laid it on kind of heavy. And the dry brush of the pewter gray is starting to look really good, and this tile is really starting to come to life. So now I'm just kind of going all the way over in one direction over every single piece here. I'm not just doing one piece at a time. I'm just going to go ahead and go over the whole entire thing. And those indentations from the texture roll are starting to look really, really good. So we're just going to add a little bit more paint to the brush here and kind of get the excess off on the paper towel. And now we're going to go ahead and move to the sides. And I think the sides turned out really, really good. Keep in mind, if you are going to construct these tiles, they don't have to be gray. I just made my paint setup for these dungeon tiles gray because that's the way they are on the campaign that I am building them for. So you can use whatever color you'd like. So we've got the other side painted up, and now we're going to move to the opposite side, and again, that way you have something to grab onto. And then once these two sides are finished drying, then you can move on to the other sides and paint the rest. And keep in mind, I didn't paint the underside because we're not going to be using the underside. I mean, I guess you could flip them over as maybe use it as like a pit tile or something. It's actually a good idea. I might do that in future videos. But yeah, we're not using the underside, so I just left it black Mod Podge. And it's starting to look pretty good. So once you have that tile all dried up with the gray paint, I went ahead and added a very, very light brush of nutmeg brown. And this is to kind of represent kind of a dingy, almost like a dirt effect to the dungeon floor here. I'm not adding a heavy dry brush at all. It's a very, very, very light dry brush, just to give it a little bit more life and kind of add a little different color mixture here. I don't know if it's really showing up that great on the camera, but you know, in person it looks really, really good. And again, it's just a very light dry brush. And in case you had missed it before, in previous videos, you guys know that I love using apple barrel paint. I just pick it up at my local Walmart, and you know, I stock up on that stuff, and I have had good results with it so far, so I'm just going to continue to keep using it. And we use the just the classic black apple barrel paint, the pewter gray, and nutmeg brown for this paint setup. Starting to look pretty good. Pretty good looking dungeon tile. Alright, let's go ahead and put a dungeon together and kind of give you an idea of what this looks like as a finished product. Got our 4 adventurers here kind of coming in through this dungeon door, and their little partner over there is facing an unknown portal, and he's not sure if he wants to step through or not. His partners are just kind of hanging out back there watching him. But as you can see, looks pretty good. And there we have it. That's how you make your basic 3x3 dungeon tile. I think these are going to be an excellent addition to the gaming table and to my campaign that I have coming up that I am currently writing right now. I love the way these dungeon tiles came out. I thought they turned out really, really good. I love the texturing. I love how everything kind of pops out. I love the paint setup that we added to it. I think the gray really stands out, along with the brown, giving it a little bit of a dingy, dirty look. A couple things that I did not do on these dungeon tiles was a black wash. I was kind of nervous about doing a black wash on these, but on another episode I have of dungeon tiles that we're going to be doing soon, I am going to experiment with a couple different things. I am going to be doing a black wash and seeing if we can really bring out all the definition on these texture indentations that we went ahead and put in there. And after everything is done and painted up and dried, I am also going to experiment with some sealer and see if we can make these even stronger. And in the next episode that I have on dungeon tiles, we are also going to be doing a little further than just a basic 3x3 format. I think I am also going to start adding some walls. I don't know if I'm going to do high walls or if I'm going to do low walls, but I'm going to experiment, and I don't know. I'll let you guys be the judge of that and decide what you think looks better or is more suitable for the gaming table. But yeah, I thought these turned out excellent, and you can bust out a whole batch of these in an afternoon or a weekend, or if you depending on your schedule, you can come back and forth and just kind of work on them as you have time to finish them up. So yeah, I think they turned out pretty good. So if you like what you saw here today on this episode, make sure to smash that like button, make sure to share and subscribe. Definitely subscribe to the channel, really helps me out, gives me the motivation, and really shows that you guys are out there watching and liking what we're putting out here as far as content on the channel. So again, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell your friends about the channel. Tell your friends about the channel, and get them involved in crafting, playing D&D with you, and just spread the word out there. Also, make sure to go check out my Facebook page, Maldor's Crafts. Every week that we put new content out here on the workbench and on video, we go ahead and post that on the page as well. So if you happen to miss anything happening here on the channel, make sure to check out that on Facebook. You can also see any of the updates that happens on there on the page. And if you guys would like to get in touch, have any questions on anything about the channel, any of the builds, materials, have any questions in general, you can always reach me at maldorscrafts@gmail.com. Again, that's maldorscrafts@gmail.com. Free filter right, and I will check that out as frequent as I can and get back to you as fast as I can. So again, thanks for stopping by the channel, and as always, stay crafty.